Hi, I'm Mark Green with the Oklahoman in Washington. Joining me here today is former Congressman Mickey Edwards, who represented Oklahoma in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1977 to 1993. He's here to talk about his new book, Reclaiming Conservatism, how a great American political movement got lost and how it can find its way back. Congressman Edwards, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
On page 15 of your book, you write, over the course of some 40 years, the conservative movement has been transformed from the single most forceful and most consistent defender of the Constitution to its most dangerous opponent. Why'd you write that?
Well, you know, I've watched what's happened when we used to believe in limited government. We used to believe in controls on the presidency and separation of powers. And now you look at what's happening with a lot of conservatives, whether it's the president or conservatives in Congress who have supported him, supporting government secrecy, supporting allowing White House officials not to have to answer subpoenas by the Congress, President signing statements that say he signs a bill into law, he doesn't have to obey it. I mean, if Lyndon Johnson had done those things, we conservatives would have been marching in the streets in protest against what he was doing. And now it's people who call themselves conservatives doing those things. And so, you know, I just finally had enough and had to say, you know, this is not us.
Are there any true conservatives in Congress right now?
Oh, sure there are. I mean, you know, it's a mix of views, but we do have an overwhelming number of conservatives who seem to place loyalty to a Republican president over loyalty to the Constitution. That's very disturbing.
You're pretty hard on President Bush.
Very hard on him.
You write at one point that he has, quote, rejected the fundamental principles of American government, end quote. Why'd you say
Well,
that?
he has, because our system, you know, I don't fault his motives. I don't do that at all. But our system is based on the separation of powers. The president is not a king. You know, he has limited powers. Most of the decision making in terms of what's the law, whether you go to war, you know, how you treat prisoners of war, all of that belongs in the Congress, in the people's representatives. That's the way our system is. That's what made it different from Britain or France or or old Europe. And the president seems to think that he is sort of an elected king, and that's disturbing.
Well, one of the ways that that you write about this really showing itself is in his conduct of the war and even taking the country to war. Hasn't President Bush simply filled a power vacuum that usually occurs when the country's at war?
No. There is a famous formulation originally by Justice Jackson that the president's powers are at their very greatest in a time of war if the Congress has not spoken. If the Congress has spoken and said, this is what you must do, this is what the law is, then the president's powers are at their weakest. The Congress, for example, on electronic surveillance, wiretapping, the Congress said we're in a time of danger. The government should be authorized to conduct electronic wiretapping, but you have to go to court and get a court order, a warrant to do it. The president said, I don't need to get a warrant. I'm the president. And no, so he is not filling a vacuum. He's actually violating the Constitution.
How do you see true conservatism reasserting itself? That's the major theme in your book.
You know, what we have to do is go back and remember what an American conservative was, whether it was from Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan, who came out of the Goldwater tradition. You know, it was, we believed in the Constitution. We used to talk about strict construction, following the Constitution, which set the rules about what government could and could not do. We have to go back and understand that our idea was to protect the rights of the American people, their liberties. Liberty was what it was about, not centralized authority. And we need to go back and look again at what that means. One example, you know, in terms of military, you know, we always believed in peace through strength. We wanted a very strong military, not so we could rush off to war someplace, you know, so we could avoid war, you know, and we've gotten all of those traditions backwards recently.
Do you think that a pure conservatism like you describe in the book can win a national election, win majority in Congress?
You know, I don't know whether it can or not. I think it can, but that's not what matters. You know, one of the things that's the biggest problem now is putting winning an election, party loyalty, party advantage, over the Constitution, over the kind of a system of government we Americans have had, you know, since our founding. And Yeah, I would love to see Republicans win. On policy issues, I agree much more with Republicans than I do with Democrats, but I don't put the Republican Party ahead of the country. I don't put the Republican Party ahead of the Constitution. And that's, so, yeah, I hope Republicans can win with this kind of a conservative agenda, but if not, then if not, we don't.
Sounds like they better read your book.
Well, I hope so.
Congressman Edwards, thanks for coming by to discuss these things. I'm Mark Green. Stay tuned to News OK for the latest news and information and analysis.